Right, well, welcome, Tom, and over to you to tell us whatever you want to tell us.
Alright, so I'm just going to apologise quickly. I wrote some jokes into this and then realised now they're kind of half funny. So, yeah. So, I started my EP with a pretty kind of hazy idea of what I wanted to do. I knew kind of something related to politics, but I wasn't really kind of too fussed which direction it would go. And I'm a bit of a YouTube addict as well, so I have to kind of look at weird documentaries like Vice, kind of about the KKK, about Westbury Baptist Church, which is one that comes up quite a lot. I chose this area kind of after starting reading newspapers earlier this year, with Tunisia, the shooting that happened at the hotel, the ISIS executions which are happening frequently, Jihadi John was in the media a lot, bombings where we should go into Syria, that kind of area was just being talked about a lot in the news and the media. If you're kind of like me at this stage and you're kind of not quite sure what to do, obviously I say choose a question fairly quickly. That's not to stress you though, because it does change a lot. And also to do something you're actually interested in, rather than something that's kind of easy to research and do a topic on, because when you're actually kind of doing the hard stuff, which takes a bit of time, it's much, much more easy for you to do if you're actually interested in it. So, what is my question? The long kind of formal one is, who is to blame for the growth of Islamophobia? But what can I say? That would mean anything. I'm not Muslim. I'm a white, middle-class guy from near Oxford who's never been into a mosque. That, however, can be my bias now. So it means me going out of my way to convince myself and others much like me that I am an authority on this somehow. So considering who I am, and I have to ask myself, why am I slightly suspicious of Islam? It sounds pretty weird. Of course, I realise not all Muslims are part of ISIS, and there are Muslims who love their family, who are peaceful and disgusted by what ISIS and other people have done to their name and religion. I felt that was important, especially with all the big political parties at the moment saying something along the lines of, we must help protect this country, which is Syria, from ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Taliban. Yeah, it changes, as I said. I started with extremist groups, that was way too big and hard to research. So there's also, the answer that was going to be fairly obvious that they're bad. I started to change it to be a bit more specific. And this might happen to you guys, don't be worried, yes, it means more work, but it's fine. So, why this is important? Obviously, the issues need to be thought about properly. It can lead to violence, which is obviously a not good thing. It's expensive to do kind of counter-terrorism, to do things which are fairly menial if they're not really focusing on the issue. It draws attention from other issues which need consideration, so food shortages and war and droughts, which are happening all over the world, essentially. The issue is that we can't have a generation which fears a religion to such an extent that we prohibit them or the religion. That's not justice, that just won't work in the long term, and it's just not what humanity is about. So why should we care? We live in England, we're fairly well off, it seems far away. We will at some point see this kind of fear firsthand, either more in the media, or firsthand with people kind of hate. We need to think more objectively what's going on about. So you need to stand back and have a look at it. So, properly. This is what we see a lot in the media. The one on the left was taken from a protest from Hyde Park last year, and the one on the right is from the aftermath of the shooting in Tunisia earlier this year. This is the kind of thing we see a lot, especially recently, and talking about going into Syria more often. And obviously, if we see this in the media, it's going to breed some kind of wariness. It just does, and we can't prohibit that, we have to accept that. And it will continue to do so if it just doesn't get talked about. Evidence from a survey showed that over half of the British people believe that Islam clashes with British values. And is that okay? Perhaps understandable with photos like these, that you kind of feel kind of scared towards Islam, that they're kind of saying this kind of thing and you see the violence firsthand. Not firsthand, sorry. And yeah, however, what we don't see is this. So the photo on the left was from a student march. And even though it doesn't look that big there, it's kind of those are the main kind of people doing it. About 4,000 people showed up there. And this was in America, I think in Montana. And this was in America, a country where over 40% of the population don't believe Obama was born in America. And why is it we don't see more of this kind of thing? Obviously there are people against ISIS, there are Muslims against ISIS, and you'd think that they try and make sure that they're not tarnished. The one on the right happened in Kurdistan, so they're kind of a bit more close to it. And it's a largely Muslim country. Again, why are we not seeing more of these protests? ISIS is a fringe radical organisation that markets terror very well. And so I think that terror may be more important to the media and us than the efforts done to actually stop it, and by the people who are close to us and actually fighting for it. Just like ironic. So this is about us really. Some of us either at school, people who we know, people in our family, people all over the country have something to say on Islam. It's understandable. We see kind of the photos that I've just shown. It's a question which causes arguments, which I say is kind of good in a way. It makes people talk about it, and it helps people kind of understand it better if it's constantly being debated. On the other hand, some of us may have people we know who are Muslim, and could think of no one less likely to be an angry upward Sharia law protester who roots for the guys who killed Lee Ripley. Out of 1.57 billion Muslims, only around 4 million would support ISIS, and not even fight them, just they approve. What I feel is that I'm wary, I admit that, but no more than I am someone who supports UKIP. It's slightly confusing to me, but then again I'm pretty atheist. I don't really support many religions. What I want is for far more clarity. I want to know more about it so I can actually think about it and kind of hear about it more. I want to hear more opinions, essentially. So, should there be someone to blame, and is there someone to blame? Those four are the normal ones. So, the media are the ones that probably hold the most sway at this point. We're the people that see the TV shows, the documentaries, the newspapers, stuff on internet, whatever. We have to think of this thing, which is probably understandable, that we trust the newspapers, but we have to question what they say. You can't believe everything in the Sun, you can't believe everything in the Daily Mirror, nothing. But ISIS, they will continue to try and make people afraid of them, and that is their point. They're terrorists and not an army, as much as they'd like to have you believe. They want to make you scared, they know that they can't fight a war. Essentially, it's like World War II in a sense. They have to kind of persuade and plant little seeds everywhere of terror. That's their goal. Governments are to blame, maybe. They're the ones who have been making decisions on whether people should be afraid. They are effectively in charge of what happens. They could go into a country, they place tens of thousands of soldiers in Libya to prevent Islamic extremism, and that can just feed more hatred. If there's going to be some kind of screw-up, then there's going to be some kind of anger against that screw-up, and more people will be fighting for ISIS. Moderate Muslims, this is quite controversial, but are they loud enough in kind of counter-protests with the Just Be Charlie Hebdo shootings? There wasn't a huge kind of outcry from the moderate Muslim community. There wasn't this kind of anger that their name or religion had been tarnished. I mean, obviously there are evidence of people doing kind of anti-ISIS protests, but I think there should be more critics of ISIS by Muslims. That's what those who are afraid, I think, need to see. Those who are afraid of Islam, that is, that they need to see that it's okay to kind of criticise, because it's this terror thing that ISIS and other groups are doing, which is preventing it perhaps a bit more close around the area, but perhaps here as well. That is kind of important, I think. Do we need to bother with blaming someone if it's already happened? The issue itself is, it's too late, I guess, in a way. If people are kind of afraid, we need to just remedy that. Don't worry about it, it's already happened. Let's just focus on amending any issues to make sure that no more stupid mistakes happen, like going into Iraq because we thought that all the people in Iraq were Muslims who would fly another plane into another building. That just creates more death to the people up close to this, the people that are going to be suffering at the hands of the growth of Islam. Of radical Islam. And it's concentrating on dealing with the issue of fear, which I've said a lot more. Fear on both sides. Fear of that the terrorists will be kind of spreading, and the fear of us. The fear that a normal person in the street will kind of attack us for no reason. That's after 9/11, someone wrote an article. She was a Muslim woman. She'd been living in New York for about 5 years, maybe. She had made great links. She'd been living in an apartment building. But on the day of 9/11, her neighbours would not let her back into her house because they feared that she would be somehow linked to 9/11. So why is this relevant to us? Relevance in the sense of this time, this kind of 2015. We're at a stage where important decisions are being made about what to do with comparatively little understanding. There are only 13 Muslim MPs in the Parliament, and that's not many. That's not enough to say, this isn't right, we need to stop this, think about it clearly, we're not all terrorists. Obviously they're not. And why it's important for us is we are the next generation. We're the ones that are going to be in power eventually. We're going to have the chance to make the decisions which are going to matter. We need to make sure that we understand both sides. That is, if it is still an issue. I hope it is, if it's possible. There will always be people who are afraid. I'd say just accept that and ignore it, perhaps. It's again the fringe little people that are always going to try and undermine it and make themselves seem bigger. You have to just kind of question it. And yeah, hopefully it does change. We need to be the ones that people use as examples, that we're the ones that kind of promoting tolerance in a way. I'm not just saying that as me as a fairly liberal guy. I'm saying we just need to do it. It's safer, it's more intelligent use of our time than just kind of roaring about it all the time. And that is essentially it.